All right, let's bring the bill. Wayne Panton, the Premier of the Cayman Islands. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Sandra.
How are
I
you?
hope you are doing well. You seem to be.
Yeah.
And I want to say a special good morning to all of the wonderful people of our incredible Cayman Islands.
Well,
I
so
know
good to see you.
some are overseas and some are here onshore listening and watching.
Mhm.
So good morning to everybody. I hope you're having a great
Absolutely.
start to the day.
Yes. And this is, the Premier comes on every other Wednesday and Premier Access in the evenings, but this is his first time since we've been on Bobo coming on in the morning. So
That's right.
warm
I don't think
welcome.
so. Yeah.
Yeah. So our Bobo listeners are getting an extra treat today. So, of course, folks, you're free to call in. The telephone number is 936 Bobo. That's 936 2626. Whatever questions you have for the Premier, he's here to answer your questions and comments. And of course, if you're on the live, we're happy to to read those as well. So, Lavana, yes, I see you this morning. Indeed. For some reason, I wasn't able to see her comments yesterday, but you are live and direct today, honey chill. Very, very good. Sanya is in the house. She said, "Good morning, my Premier."
Good morning, Sonia. Good morning.
All right. So we got questions coming straight out of the barn for you this morning. First question we got a couple days ago on a previous show. Someone was inquiring, the situation with Russia and Ukraine. Obviously, the Cayman Islands has an order that has been handed down to freeze assets. And the question was, what happens to those frozen assets?
Well, that is a bit of a question
Mm-hmm.
because for the moment, the assets are just being frozen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't, at some point, there has to be a decision about how those assets get treated. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but at this point, this is being, these assets are being frozen and prevented from being distributed to anyone, and specifically to their to their listed owners, who are all the subjects of the UK sanctions against Russia.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what the position is with that. Um, we don't have any specific instructions at this point that I'm aware of. We have a team within government that is various of the entities and organizations and regulators that are involved with financial services, um, and they have regular meetings
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that we are doing what we're required to do in terms of implementing the sanctions. But where we go from here remains to be seen, and I think effectively, it'll be the subject of probably international discussions
Mm-hmm.
down the road, as to what happens with those frozen assets. I think a large, as you might imagine, to a large extent, I believe it probably depends on what approach Russia takes in resolving this conflict, because they initiated it. So we'll have to
Mm-hmm.
see. For the moment, we're required to freeze them and hold them and not
Mm-hmm.
allow any dealings. And
Right.
we report regularly. I think we're in the region now of about 8 billion, just over 8 billion um, dollars in assets that have been frozen, and there are a few vessels and aircraft that have been removed from the register here. Not a tremendous amount, I don't think, but the list of sanctioned people are. I haven't looked at the recent number, but it's somewhere north of 800.
Mm-hmm.
So as you can imagine, Cayman is a very significant international financial center.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of global investment transactions are done here. So
Right.
there will be no surprise that some of these persons, some of these 800 plus persons, are
Mm-hmm.
you know um, owning assets and owning part of investments through Cayman Islands vehicles. It's not that they own it themselves; they're
Mm-hmm.
just participating in the investment. So we're on a wait and see in relation to that.
Right. Yes, I'm sure a lot of them have those mega yachts that are actually registered in the Cayman Islands as well. Now, if it's registered here, but we don't physically have the yacht, because of course it's probably in Greece or somewhere else in the world, we can't actually confiscate that because that would be physical confiscation. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, it's, other states could possibly do it, but at this point, we have not been asked to confiscate hard assets like vessels
Okay.
and aircraft. Effectively, we are doing what we can to address a scenario where we know that, pardon me, we know that they're owned by persons who are subject to the sanctions. And really, at this point, all we can do is take them off the register. And
Hmm.
we actually don't have the power right now to organize, the seizing of these assets and holding them. I mean, to be honest, for me, that's a bit of a relief because when you seize an asset, you have a corresponding obligation to make sure that it's protected in some way, and it's
Hmm.
these things are really expensive to maintain,
Hmm.
and some of them are worth um, tens of millions, some hundreds of millions. So
Hmm.
you can't just park them and leave them.
Right.
We don't want the obligation to be responsible for their safekeeping while this issue about what happens with assets that are subject to sanctions gets resolved internationally.
Absolutely. All right. So hopefully that will answer that question. And that's kind of what I was saying as well. I was like, I don't think we could just be like, oh, we're going to redivert these assets, all this money sit in somebody's bank account to help out NAU, and it's not that sort of thing. But I feel like it's really, really important for people to understand these processes and how things work,
Yeah.
because they just think, oh, wow, we now have money that belongs to somebody else and we can do whatever we want with it, and that isn't quite how the process
Right, and
works.
there is a distinction, obviously, between seizing an asset for the purpose of controlling it and not allowing it to be dealt with,
Right.
and forfeiture. So
Yeah.
when we're talking about forfeiture, that
Mhm.
means effectively forfeiting the asset to the state, to the country.
Mhm. Mhm.
And in that case, if if that was the position, then it'd be a whole different story.
Mm.
We'd be in a great position, but
Right.
that's not what's happening here. The assets are just being frozen for right now.
Yeah. Okay, good. So 936 folks, 2626 is the telephone number. If you have any questions or comments for the premiere, we do have some that were sent in a WhatsApp that we'll get to now. So this one is asking about maternity and paternity law. Says that dads get only 5 days according to what is currently allowed. This is not enough time to bond or allow moms to heal. I think I heard that there was going to be some amendment, but haven't heard anything since, and no timeline for when they anticipated it could take effect. So, any information on when that might be happening?
Well, we've had a number of discussions on this issue. We've had presentations from um, groups that are really interested in promoting this, and I think that people are sympathetic, very sympathetic to those kinds of issues. And for right now, it's for us to make sure that we do the necessary work to do the at least the initial consultations to get more guidance as to how we can do this effectively.
Mhm.
I mean, it's a question of who ends up paying for this. Is it the case that employers are required to give workers the time off, some of it paid and some of it unpaid, or is it all paid? Is it at a reduced rate? These types of broad policy issues have to be discussed, and I think
Mhm.
based on the discussions that I'm aware of at this point, um, there is a level of commitment to moving the discussion forward and figuring out what policy position we want to take on it. But this would require amendments to the labor law, obviously. And I think there are broader discussions around aspects of amendments to the labor law that we think are important as well.
Right.
And as you know, we have a minimum wage committee, which is working as well, because we've had a minimum wage basically stuck at $6 an hour for the last 6 or 7 years. I can tell you from my own personal knowledge that being part of the government that implemented that to begin with, it was never intended that it would be left at $6 an hour. It was supposed to be reviewed a year later.
Right.
So for whatever reason, that didn't occur. That was very close to the end of our term at that point. As you know, I sat out the next 4 years, the next term. So I don't know what the thinking was in relation to that, but these are a number of issues that we are working on now to be able to move forward. And I hope that we'll be in a position. I don't think it'll be dealt with, and I don't think we'll have the results of the for example, the minimum wage committee until probably the end of the year, which means we're going to be looking at dealing with any amendments probably the end of the first quarter of next year or something in that area.
Right. So, I mean, obviously, you've mentioned that when you're looking at a particular law, you're trying to see what elements of it might require amendment, and there has to be a consultation period, public consultation, and so on. So, that's but one area to that caller's or viewer's point that they believe should be addressed. But minimum wage is another area. Someone else was asking about. I just saw someone years of service in the organization. I'm thinking that might be, I don't know if that's when you leave the organization, like the compensation, you know how it's what is it? 1 week for every year, I think is a severance pay. Yes. I don't know if Dacia is speaking specifically to severance pay, but
I don't know. I think she may be thinking about additional benefits, but normally benefits that are granted by law are going to be benefits that are available to everybody.
Right. And they'll be at the minimal level, but your employer could always do more.
Exactly. So an employer could say, you know what, I have, or we have difficulties with employee retention, or these are really good people that we want to have on board. We want to retain them. So they look for creative ways to keep their employees happy and engaged. And so they expand the level of benefits, and in that case, they may do that on the basis of performance assessments. So it's reflected on merit, or they may do it by the length of tenure. You can take different approaches. But yeah, I mean those are all possibilities.
Very good. Miss Isabel Geiger's in the house. Good morning. Sorry, she says good morning, Sandy. I wish you were on 24/7. Oh my gosh, don't think the voice could hold up that long. Dave says, what will the government do about rent being so crazy high?
Well, obviously this issue is connected with the whole issue of housing and availability of housing at a reasonable cost. And, it is something that we are constantly working on and discussing. I mean, just last night, I got home at about 10 o'clock. A little bit after 10 actually, got straight on the telephone, and I was on the phone until about 12:45 or 1 a.m. Talking to some of the realtors on issues like this, asking for their suggestions on how we can address some of these issues. And it was an extremely productive discussion, but we obviously have a number of different facets that we have to look at here. So we're looking at finance and any issues around that, and putting in place provisions that help to protect the interests of persons who may be, for example, in a default situation. And obviously that's becoming more relevant for us now because of the Federal Reserve increasing the rate in the US, which has a direct implication here for Cayman based on the way the banks operate here. We also have discussions around, supply, making sure that the National Housing Development Trust is on track and moving ahead, and making progress with being able to deliver housing as a part of the supply. We also have some of the local developers that are planning. They have subdivisions planned, which is going to involve things that are effectively affordable housing. So we have a range of issues. I think for us in Cayman, we've got to figure out what the solution is. And it's not going to necessarily be some grand announcement about a particular initiative that resolves the problem, because it's a multifaceted problem. And we have to make a number of adjustments, a number of changes to try to help. And this isn't unique to us. It's a challenge that is unfortunately happening around the world, and it is a challenge which a lot of our young people, both globally and certainly here in Cayman, are dealing with. And I think part of the frustration for our people in Cayman is that they see a lot of the significant developments occurring on West Bay Beach, for example, and none of those are available to them, and just not in their price range. So these are this raises the whole question that's always been around about who are we developing for, right? And we have to make sure that we have an answer for that. There has to be benefit. There has to be developments that provide opportunities for our people, not just somebody from China or somebody from Canada or the US or the UK or wherever else who want to come in and buy a multi-million-dollar condo and live in it for a few weeks of the year, and then the rest of the year it stays empty. That doesn't serve our national interest. At least not in that respect.
All right. So we do have some other questions that came in earlier. So this one says, good morning, Sandy. Hope that all is well. If possible, can you please ask Mr. Panton, who's the vast majority in this? It's referring to the survey. So there's multiple people have sent the same question. So I'm just going to ask these. This person says, I can't find one person who's aware of this survey, and these things should at the very least be sent to registered voters. Since we're going to support when elections come around and we have a say at this time, should we not also have a say when it comes to such important decisions being made about our country? And the person went on to say, Sandy, I kid you not, I've contacted almost everyone I know and asked just about everyone in my neighborhood and had friends do the same, and we've all come up empty. No person so far was aware of this survey, and this is simply unacceptable. For these things to take place, and there's no awareness of the general population, especially the registered voters. So that was one person. Another person said, oops, that's the wrong one. Hold on. Let me move that one out of the way. The other person said, hey, Sandy. Oh, wait, I think I've loaded the same one twice. 1 second. So we had two from that person. One more coming in. So this is a survey that had to do with, hold on, I think I reloaded those twice. But basically this, and I didn't see this myself, so I actually don't know where this was put, but let me tell you what this is in relation to. So the Compass had put something up about the your Ministry of Sustainability. And so another person says, ask the Premier if this survey was made public, because not even CMR seems to be aware of it. And many are saying that they weren't aware, interested to know who the vast majority of residents are. And then I'm going to tell you exactly what the survey is. So I don't know.
A little bit of information I need is what survey it is that we're referring.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Oops, there we go. All right. So the vast majority came in. And so this is something from the Compass. So this was some sort of survey that was facilitated by the Ministry of Sustainability and Climate Resiliency.
Okay, I know what survey this is then.
Yeah. So no one seems to have seen this survey. So do you know anything about how the survey was promoted and how many people participated?
I mean, I think that there are efforts always to advise people about these things. There, a lot of social media efforts were employed that I know of. I think they posted it on our website. I can't tell you every single step that was taken to try to make sure that there was local knowledge and participation, but clearly, it reached a lot of people, because I can tell you that I was advised that they were expecting, based on the normal sort of rule of thumb of these types of things, they were expecting somewhere around 350 responses. And we ended up with something close to 1,100, in excess of 1,000, let's say, between 1,000 and 1,100 responses, which, I'm told that is a significant level of response. Now, I don't know why it is that certain people may not have seen it. I think
we didn't. To be honest, I didn't know anything about it. And the rule of thumb for me is, if I'm coolest, probably a lot of people are.
Well, I think maybe I'll make sure that in future all these things are given to you. But a lot of effort was made to try to ensure that as many people were aware of it as possible. This was a survey that was done in connection with the climate change risk assessment that was being we've been carrying out. We've had public meetings. We had a public meeting at the Georgetown Town Hall. And one of the issues is that I personally would like to see more involvement of the various districts, presentations in these districts on issues like this. But there was a meeting at South Sound Hall that I don't think was open to the public. That was key stakeholders and some of the participants. And then there was a big public meeting at the Georgetown Hall where I went and I spoke. And I think you will remember.
I remember you came on the show that same evening.
Same night that I had a show with you. Same evening I had a show with you. So I went there, I stayed, I spoke for about 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and then I left and I came and got straight on the show with you. And then after that, I went back. After the show finished, I went back. We had lots of Caymanians there. I mean, a lot of people were aware of it. We had a very good turnout. It was somewhere, I want to say it was probably close to about 100 people. For the town hall, that's a pretty significant turnout. So a lot of people, I think, were aware of it. It may be that we all have our particular interests, and some people may not have been, paid attention to that. But well, I think the challenge for us is to constantly try to figure out how we can, improve our level of engagement. But either way,
so I've gotten some. Someone has sent me some information. They said 1,085 persons responded. I mean, that might be a lot compared to, I suppose, what normally respond, but that's a drop in the bucket when you think about even how many voters we have, much less if we're looking at Cayman residents, right? So the majority of respondents were between the ages of 35 to 54 years of age. Most were female. And the majority of respondents possess either a bachelor's or graduate degree and reported being employed full time. But again, I think I'm curious to know where this survey was actually shared, because if you're missing, climate resiliency and climate change impacts everybody, not just the 35 to 54-year-olds. Everybody has to care about this issue. And I just feel like a lot of times this happens with initiatives I see happening in government. Like people just don't know about it. I was having a conversation with the deputy governor yesterday, and I said to him, listen, we get stuff from Cayman Brac all the time at Cayman Brac events. We have a community calendar. We share it on there. We share it on social media because we know some people don't know the community calendars on the website. So if they miss that, we'll put it on our Facebook page. Social media has a wide reach. We'll talk about it in the show because some people listen to the show and they don't have social media. So you've got to do a sort of 360 comprehensive approach to getting the word out there. And, even with government job adverts, sometimes they send me a job advert, although I think I need to change my strategy, Premier, because I've been posting them up and they get tons of applicants. I'm like, hold on a second. If they sent this to the Compass, they'd actually have to pay money to have it advertised. So I need to start thinking like a business person. So caller, good morning and welcome to the program.
Good morning.
How are you?
Not bad. I think the problem is that it sounds great to say representative of government has a website and you post it on the relevant website. Sounds good in theory, except that from the perspective of the individual, that's overwhelming. You can't keep track of stuff that's all over the place with agencies that you don't even know what they're named and when they change their name and all sorts of things. I think you need to have a portal. Now, I think government needs to have one place that that information like this gets sent to. Even if they want to post it on an individual website, that's fine. But you need to have a central place where people can go to, where they say, I know that if government is telling the public something, it'll be on this website. That's simple.
Yeah.
Because people having to go looking all over the place for agencies they don't even know exist, that's not practical.
I mean, in theory, Denny, the gov.ky website should be that website, because it then links to a lot of it links a lot of the other sites, right? Yeah. But again, people will find this at times probably a little bit confusing, because there are so many government departments and agencies and ministries. And so, you know, sometimes it takes a minute to even be able to find something on any website, regardless of kind of where you're going to find it. You know, there's quite a bit of information. I'm just having a quick look at the government website right now.
Well, let me just add that I think that you know, clearly the communications department in government are obviously aware of the challenges of being able to reach as many people as possible, and they don't just post it on websites. You know, they proactively do lots of different social media posts. They put it on Instagram. They do Facebook. I'm not sure what other platforms they use, but at the end of the day, they are pushing it out there, trying to be proactive, trying to ensure that there is much participation as possible. I do think that there may be some merit to having a specific sort of channel that, you know, people know if there is sort of interaction that the government is seeking, that they sort of can monitor or can go to and check from time to time. And I will raise that with the comms group. But I do think,
let me give one example.
But let me just say, it's one of the challenges is we don't know how many people we have reached. We don't know who we have reached, but we can only measure who has responded. So, you know, the response has been much better than predicted. But as you say, there may be people in particular areas that haven't seen it, not aware of it. And I think we have to constantly face the challenge of doing a better job and trying to make sure that the people of the country are aware of these things as much as possible. Because at the end of the day, it is important for us to be aware of their views.
Yeah. Is there any way to, because a lot of people, I have someone else just mentioned that said survey, what survey? Is there any way to reopen this particular survey if more people want to participate? Because I think this is probably one of those that we could get way more than just 1,000 people.
Well, I mean, the report is due this month. Sorry. Yeah, this month. We're September 1st, right? The report is due this month. It's due in a couple of weeks, I think, on this particular issue. But there can be many other issues that we improve our engagement on. I don't know whether we can delay the report and run another survey to get greater feedback. I don't know if we're going to end up with greater feedback. We'd have to see. But I think, again, if you end up with 2 surveys, then you've got to figure out how much is a duplication. It gets confusing, I think. So I will have a discussion, but I can see the difficulties of trying to run another survey. This is not a yes and no type thing. You know, there's a whole range different questions, trying to gauge what people's understanding are of this issue, what their particular concerns are, how, is it a significant issue for them? To be honest, when we're talking about an existential issue, between us having a future in 30 to 40 years time in the country for our children, and a legacy that we leave behind in which they can successfully prosper in the way we have, that's a very significant thing. So let me have a discussion and see whether it's possible to do something like that. But it may be that we'll just have to get much better at ways of trying to get this out. And this has been a challenge all along for years, decades.
And I'll be honest with you, Premier. Someone said to me, a press release was sent out on these dates. And I know the communications arm of government loves a press release. And I keep saying to people, even on this program, believe me when I tell you, people don't read. You send out a press release. Number one, most of them are way too long. They read the first paragraph and that's it. They check out. So send your press release, sure, because that's what you've been doing for 50 years and you think that's the end all and be all. But there has to be other mechanisms of reaching the people. Here's a perfect example. When the hazmat people launched the emergency, what's it called? The emergency app, right? Where you'll get these emergency alerts, whatever. We invited them on the program, went through with people. This is how you sign up. This is what you do. And in real time, people were doing it. They were signing up. They were reporting, okay, I couldn't get past this stage. I was having this issue. And they saw the number of people who registered for that shoot up immediately. Same thing with the HSA. We kind of had to beg them to come on and show people how to register for that portal. Oh no, just tell them to go to the website. I'm like, listen to me. People need the visual. They need to see how it's done. They need you there to answer any questions they may have. And, it sounds like such a simple method, but anybody who's ever been a teacher, an instructor, whatever, knows that showing is much better. We could have literally sat here, said, here's a link for the survey. Let's all go fill it out in real time. I would have loved to fill it out. I didn't do it. We could easily quadruple those numbers for you. So I hope that whoever is in charge of that survey considers maybe extending it even by a week. That's all we need. And I can guarantee you we can quadruple your numbers in a week. But I'll leave that for you. Danny, anything else on your mind before we continue with other questions?
One example of consolidating information is the Gazette. Like if you go to the legislation website, you can't look back and see the Gazettes. You have to go to a different website. That's an example. So like someone who might not be that familiar with it might look for it and say, well, I don't see it here. And then and so you then have to know to go to another website to look for other Gazette documents. And and things that are in relation to legislation or the legislative process, I should say, should be on the legislation website, Gazette-wise. So that you can have access to all of the information as it pertains to legislation.
Right.
But that's just an example of what I'm saying about. I understand that we're trying to transition from an old way of doing things to a new way of doing things. I understand that things take time and it takes money, and sometimes you have to work out what is the best way to do something. I understand those things. I'm just pointing it out is all I'm saying.
Okay. Thanks, Danny. Appreciate it.
All right. Take care.
All right. Mr. Basil Hamilty says third-party services such as SurveyMonkey. I'm sure they had it. I don't think the delivery of the survey was really the issue. It's just trying to get it out there. And so again, you hit it from all angles, folks. Web placement, social, emails, send out emails. Please take this survey, any way that you can get it. So Nathina has a question about an anti-bullying law. She's asking, when is that going to be passed? Because she was told that it should be dealt with this month.
So we do have, we're moving forward with the changes to the education education law or act by way of an amendment bill. We have proposed regulations as well. So after some time, I'm really happy to be able to say that we're moving forward. There's traction, and it will go to Parliament. We're going to be addressing this concern that everybody understands is really important. I know that you often cover stories about fights in school, for example. These things are all involved with issues around bullying and issues around behavior that is antisocial and not acceptable. So, and this is really obviously very relevant right now because we are at the point of going back to school for the new school year. We have kids that are some have started back already. Some are starting this week or maybe next week. So it's really important, and I want our children to get the benefit of having this kind of protection, having these sorts of policies, which will help to eliminate or significantly reduce these types of issues. Because when they go to school, we want them to be safe. We want them to be in an environment where they can learn, and we want them to be happy. And this is an issue that I think has sat around for a while, and I'm really happy, really happy to say that we're going to be able to move forward and address this. And I certainly thank the Ministry of Education for getting this to the point that we're at. We're right on the cusp of getting this in place. The Deputy Speaker and Parliamentary Secretary for Education as well, Ms. Kathy Ebanks Wilkes, was very much involved with that. And the interesting aspect in relation to her is that she was an employee of the Law Reform Commission. So she actually worked with the Law Reform Commission in this area while the report was being done on this and the recommendations being made. So the report was presented to caucus and cabinet and accepted, and the drafting instructions were taken forward. So we're right on the cusp of getting this done, and I think it's really important, and the timing couldn't be better to make sure that we can get this in place to start to positively impact the experiences of our wonderful young people in schools for this school year. So that's all fantastic, and I certainly want to encourage every child. I want to encourage parents to be very positive. I think the journey of education is not just about school. It is about parents being sure that they impart a level of positivity and strong influence over their children. Clarity that that education is important, and they need to be committed to that, and the child needs to be committed to it. And I want to encourage all of them to ensure, whether they're family members, parents, or whether they're caregivers, whoever it is, whoever comes in contact with our children, I want to encourage them to all be positive and contribute and work hard. Let's have a great environment. I know it's an exciting time, particularly for the younger children, but it's also very exciting for those who are older, who are changing years, perhaps looking at different sort of career paths for themselves, getting near the end of their high school experience, and it can be a little bit anxious as well for a lot of them, So we want to be positive and encouraging, and we want the environment to be great. And the anti-bullying provisions, I think, are going to, and the policies around that are going to play a significant role in assisting us being able to make this a great, positive, wonderful, encouraging experience for our children. So, and remember as well, we committed to making sure that our kids got the proper nutrition. We have high schools and primary schools where We have free lunches, breakfast, snacks. It reflects a significant commitment of the country and the government to ensuring that our children have the best possible potential to learn and grow and develop. So just to say, I'm encouraging parents, encouraging everyone to take advantage of the new opportunities that this new school year presents. And I want you all have a wonderful time.
All right. Caller, welcome to the program.
Good morning, honey child. How are you today?
Oh, honey child, I'm good. How are you?
I am blessed and highly favored beyond all measures.
As always.
Good morning,
Isn't that
Premier.
wonderful?
Good morning, dear.
Yes, it is. Premier, your food for thought. Regarding our school system, our neighbor countries that I have traveled, if a child does not meet a standard, does not pass their subjects or their year, they repeat them. A hearing came on, whether they pass or not, they're just pushing them through the system. At the end of the day, it's not being taken seriously. They're out there doing drugs and committing crime to survive. Why can't our system start, because I've been asking for years, why can't we show more interest in our children by having them repeat if they do not pass, to ensure that they're coming out with some sort of education?
Well,
I have other questions, but I've written them already.
Okay.
Yeah. I think you make a very good point. It does raise some very significant issues, and it's a challenge, and it's an issue that has been debated back and forth for a long time. We have had times in our history where we've done just that. We've had people repeat years, and I think more recently, I guess, I don't know what the time frame might be, but probably maybe 10 years. We've had less of that. We've had this concept of progressing people through school. If we're going to have that approach, then clearly what it does is it puts us under a much greater obligation to try to ensure that the child is maximizing its ability to, the child's ability to learn and develop as a young person, so that they become well-rounded, developed adults who are able to go on to have good careers and contribute to society and have wonderful families and all that. So, this is a discussion that I'm not the expert on education policy, but clearly this is an issue that has been discussed, and maybe it's time to have another discussion about it. I'll have a discussion with the education minister, the Honorable Juliana O'Connor Conley, and see what her thoughts are. I haven't had any recent briefing on this particular point, so I don't have much that I can tell you in that context.
Yes,
about
I think it needs to be. It should be evaluated. And I tell you what. Recently, I was doing a school tour at one of the private schools, and they were saying to me that they have Caymanian children that come into their school. For the first time, I think they've had, I believe it's 7 or 8 kids that have been given, scholarships at no cost to them or their parents to be able to attend the school. Some of the children went in there, and when they were testing, because this school is based on the American system, and they do the IB program.
Baccalaureate, international.
Yes, the baccalaureate. Yes. And they discovered that, especially for math and the sciences, one young lady, for example, would have been struggling tremendously if they had put her in the grade equivalent that she was in the government system. So she decided, with her parents and consulting with everyone, to go back a year because, again, it was going to give her an opportunity to kind of get caught up, to learn some things that she may have missed in chemistry and math and whatever, so that she could prepare herself for the eventual additional classes and examinations. So I think that caller certainly brings up a really good point, that if a child isn't ready, and I don't know, this is a question about the government system that I don't personally know, but how are they even assessing a child's readiness to then move on to the next grade? So Jean says, I know someone who asked for their child to repeat a year and was told no. And the interesting thing is, it shouldn't be for a parent to be making that assessment or to be asking that question. I mean, obviously a parent might see their children are struggling, but there should be some formal assessment process within the school system itself that identifies, students who are not ready, who've not passed a minimal set of criteria to then move on to the next grade. Warren has a wonderful suggestion. He says, what about weekend classes? I can no longer identify and say that I'm a super young person, but I still think I'm relatively young.
I still feel that way.
Yeah, but I remember Premier Panton, when I was in the 7th grade, I mean, this was eons ago now.
Yes.
When I was in the States, and I remember that they had an after-school program. They actually had a toll-free number that you could call and get help with homework assignment. These were sometimes retired teachers or professors who had extra time or whatever. And they actually had, if you needed science, you would press this number. If you needed help with math, or you didn't understand how this equation was working and you just needed help with your homework, you could call the after school hotline, and there are people there answering the phone, helping you with your homework, helping you understand concepts and theories, maybe giving you additional, back then we weren't really using the internet. So they'd refer to you like, okay, maybe try to look up this section in your book and let's go through this and make sure that you're understanding the core principles. And I've always wondered, I mean, it seems relatively easy for something like that to be implemented. You could even utilize volunteers, because there might be retired teachers and so on who are just looking for something to do, who might be happy to give of their time. But I've always wondered why we don't have more, even outside the classroom, more opportunities for children to have, further assistance if they need it.
Yeah,
and
no,
not to say
I agree with that.
We all need help.
I totally agree. And, if you look at our education results, they are trending upwards. So the results are improving. But I personally feel that they could be better. And I think we should all aspire as a country to have our children just generally, I mean, society generally, be better informed, better educated, be able to take advantage of the jobs that exist. Because, one of the issues we have had is, as you know, and this is a part of the sort of underlying factor in a number of the issues that we may have here. As wonderful as Cayman is compared to many other countries around the world, we all know we have our problems, and some of the issues relate to the fact that we've grown an economy, we've grown a country which is much bigger than the Caymanians that we have necessarily to fill all the roles. So we have a really high level or high number of guest workers, work permit holders, and many of these jobs. So our challenge is not creating jobs. Our challenge is to make sure that our Caymanian people are educated and be able to take advantage of a lot of these opportunities that are out there, and to be able to, to move up and improve the circumstances for their families, etc. And areas around, for example, English and math in particular, I think the English results have been fairly good and improving, but we actually have, I think, a lag in terms of math. And these are really, in particular, in the changing macroeconomic environment, in the fact that, we have technology being a more significant role in a lot of the things we do in our economy and in our country. Math is an important area that we need to be able to improve on, and we're not, we're lagging behind in math statistics as far as I'm aware. And this is something that more recently, I think over the last 2 or 3 weeks, I've been having discussions with people about, addressing the same things that you were just mentioning, about being able to have mentoring, to have additional classes, have support being provided to our students, so that we can sort of bridge some of the gaps and build on that as we continue to try to improve the level of learning in our schools. I mean, our teachers and the cadre of teachers we have are wonderful, and we respect them. We support them as much as we can, and I think that as I said, the general trend is an improvement, but I think there are areas that we have to make sure that we try to fill some of the gaps, bridge some of the gaps, and try to advance things. And I would like personally to see more of that happening in different communities. I don't know, there are NGOs that do a lot of work around a variety of needs in our country, and in things like learning, we have a wonderful organization called Life, which is learning is for everyone, I think, and I think they've been doing a good job. To be honest, yesterday I was planning to I made a mental note to contact some of the people who are involved with that to see what we can do to encourage more activity across the spectrum in supporting our children and helping to improve some of the grades, particularly in areas around English and math, because those are areas that are really important, not just for communication, not just for our ability to write CVs, but math is a strong background subject that helps us in a broad variety of areas, as I said, particularly in relation to our changing economic environment. So I want to see this done. I want to try to do everything we can to help our children develop further and learn a lot more.
Well, we have quite a few people who are weighing in on this one. Lavana says that this is so true, that she remembers when she went to school, and that wasn't yesterday, trust me, and she graduated, and there were still a lot of people who couldn't read and write. Moya says, this is true, and an FOI I did to education department a few years ago showed that only 20% of the government school children leave year 6 at the required level to be successful in school. So that means that 80% of our children are struggling and failing, and they keep pushing them forward. Judy says, I think we also need to be mindful that many children are not academically inclined. So having them repeat doesn't necessarily mean that they will learn. It's more recognizing what each student is lacking and offering extra classes for them or teaching them a skill. Yeah. And I don't know how academically inclined is being determined, but you should have the basics. Like, you should know how to read and write and do the basic math. And that doesn't mean that you're going to turn out to be an academia and you're going to be a professor or a lawyer or a doctor, but you don't have to be academically inclined. Again, I'm not sure how that is really being defined, to be able to just read and write. I mean, those are the basics. No matter if you're a mechanic, if you're a housekeeper, domestic worker, you should know how to read and write. So there's some basic standards I think that we need to encourage everyone to reach, and not even the message that we send out to our children, like for them to think that is somehow because you know how to read and write, that somehow makes you academically brilliant, isn't the case. I mean, listen, I've seen lawyers. I just saw a letter this week from one, and I was like, this person should go back to remedial school and learn how to construct a proper sentence. Sorry?
So are you picking on lawyers?
Yes, this every single sentence was a run-on sentence and 5 lines long and comma, comma, comma. I'm like, oh, the sentence structure, the clarity was in there. I mean, it was horrific. And, they are a qualified lawyer and they've been practicing for many, many years, and they're like 50, 60 years old. So, it doesn't, one thing I want to say, the expectations that we set for children are extremely important. If you tell your children day in and day out that, oh, you don't have to be academically inclined, they will interpret that to mean that they don't even have to try in school. Yeah. So, we're not saying everyone is going to be brilliant. Everyone's going to be, a scientist, whatever, but you've got to really push your children to do their best and to give their best every single day. Now, we do have an interesting bit of information that has come up and I'm going to have a read of this because this is probably a much deeper conversation. But someone says that the research is clear that grade retention is not effective over time. It is related to many negative academic, social, and emotional outcomes for students, especially students of color who have been retained. There is also clear evidence that after intervention, such as targeted intensive tutoring, expanded learning time, and supporting strong relationships between adults and students, have much better outcome for students. And yes, I think all of those things are important. And it's also important to know, again, what the criteria is that students are being judged by. So Nathina, your bullying question has been answered. If you miss it, just kind of scroll back a little bit. Dean, joining us from overseas, says that he's listening and just wanted you to know that he's joining, I believe he said earlier, from Jamaica. Steb says just the thought of repeating will make some kids work harder and thus making them better school leavers. Maybe, but I think there's a lot of support that needs to be there from the parental side and otherwise. We do have, oh, Denny, I forgot about you. We have another caller coming in. So let me just grab this caller and then we'll end because I know the Premier has given us a limited amount of time this morning. We do have another guest. So Denny, if you can make your comments or questions as succinct as possible. Denny? No? Caller? Hello? Okay, I don't know what happened there. Anybody on the line? I showed two people. Oh, my apologies. Hold on. That's my mistake. There we go. Now you're in Bluetooth. Morning, callers. Hi, Denny.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
I just want to say one thing quickly before I make the statement I wanted to make.
Okay.
I can hear you clearly,
Mm-hmm.
but it sounds like there's a noise gate. Perhaps the Premier is not close enough to his mic, so parts of his words are getting chopped off.
Okay. And we're going to address
if I
that for
can-
next time as well. I think he needs a lapel mic
okay.
to resolve that. Yeah.
Yeah. And then the point that I wanted to make is that I think what would be most beneficial for improving education
Mm-hmm.
is to have a sufficient amount of teachers' aides in each classroom
Mm-hmm.
to help the teacher bring along students who might be slower in grasping a concept
Mm-hmm.
in real time instead of pushing them off to some additional program.
Mm.
So they just sometimes people just need a little bit of extra help in the moment
Mm-hmm.
to get it, and then they can just keep going and their self-esteem will be better.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And then what that does is it prevents the gaps from taking place in the first place.
Mm-hmm. And this
so
is where
I see that.
Yeah, early childhood care is so critical. And I see that, when you read the educational reports, a lot of our early childhood programs, or I don't know if we really want to call them institutions, but, daycare centers and whatever, they're not meeting the mark. And those first 5 years of a child's life are the most important, even in terms of a child's educational attainments later on in life. So knowing that, we really need to, brush up on some of these so-called daycare centers that we're allowing to operate and the standards by which, they're allowing to keep their doors open. I mean, we just need better standards overall.
I agree with that. And what I'd like to say is that when people think about public schools and private schools, people normally give private schools glowing remarks, but really and truly, what I'm describing there about being able to catch these issues in real time and address them before they become more serious problems is really the difference. Mm-hmm. And so where our efforts needs to be is in preventing children from falling behind. And I don't agree with the idea that somehow children are not academically inclined. Mm-hmm. Any child can learn to read, write, and do math. We just need to make it happen.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I agree with that comment. I mean, some people will have more interest, some people have less interest in these areas, but I do fundamentally believe that, there is a level of achievement that all children are probably capable of. I have a young person who I worked with, who I helped go to a special needs school in the U.S. And that young person, and I'm trying to be vague so that I don't divulge who it is, but that young person went through that school, improved, but with the guidance and with the support and with the positive encouragement, that young person went on to a full-fledged recognized university in the US and graduated with a finance degree, with something like a GPA of around 3.7, 3.8. That is fantastic performance when you start off in a situation where you've got some degree of learning disabilities. So I would encourage everybody to not feel that because somebody has some kind of potential learning disability that it's going to limit them in life. There are ways to overcome this, and we just have, as a country, as a community, as an education system, we have to do whatever we can to try to overcome those and help our children achieve. Because as everybody has said, and a lot of the comments, very good comments, by the way, it makes for a better society, more confident society, and this is and people who feel a greater sense of happiness, a greater sense of accomplishment, a greater sense of achievement. And this is exactly what we want for our country. This is exactly what we want for our young people. So for me, it's, I'm committed to doing as much as we can to try to make this a reality.
Absolutely. And let me just share, Danny, we do have another caller who's said they're waiting for you to wrap up, but let me just quickly share this point from the perspective of personal experience, because I think, a lot of times people are listening and sometimes they are, there's a stigma attached to having any sort of learning disability, or there's a stigma attached to our own personal history. Is like, nobody wants to say, oh, I was that kid. And I am more than happy to tell anybody in the world that I was that kid when I was in the Cayman Islands. So eventually, she was principal at a school, head of, I don't know, all her positions, politician, supposed to be a big time educator. This individual, and I'm not going to call her name, she's still very much alive and kicking, actually told my parents that I needed to be put in Lighthouse School because I was a slow learner. Now make that sink in for a minute, because when I went to the US, nobody told me that I was a slow learner. They're like, here is where you're at. You're in the 4th grade. This is the criteria. This is what you need to do. By the time I reached high school, I was in AP classes, advanced placement classes, doing college level work in high school. I hate math with a passion. So I must admit, it took a little bit, this is just a mental block. It took a little bit of extra for me to do well in math, but I got up to algebra. I didn't want to do advanced placement math because I'm like, nope, this is not the field that I'm going in. I have a different direction. But, even to get to algebra, when I was going to trigonometry, I'm like, no, please don't make me do this. I really don't like math and I don't want to go to that level. So I picked up on other, social sciences, languages, and other things that I was really good at. It doesn't mean that I wasn't academic. And I don't know to this day how that person came to the conclusion that I was special needs and needed to be put in a Lighthouse School. But imagine the difference. The different outcome in my life had I stayed in the Cayman Islands and been sent to Lighthouse School. We as parents and adults, and sometimes so-called educators who are supposed to be the experts, are limiting children. We put the limitations on them, and we put ideas in the heads of parents and even the children, right, that will hold them back. I have seen children in this community that have been labeled as special needs that only had a sight problem. There was nothing mentally wrong with them in any way, shape, or form. But because of the limitations of the support around them, the family not understanding that this person could have been a lawyer, they could have been a doctor, they would have just needed different types of technology to help with the sight problem. They could have been anything in the world. Instead, they were relegated to Lighthouse School. Yeah. Nice young lady. You sit in the corner and you help with the other severely handicapped children. So we ourselves do our children a disservice by limiting them, by putting them in a box. And I have worked with a few special needs persons. I remember once I took a young lady overseas and we were in the mall and, had a conversation with someone. And after we walked away, I said, by the way, do you know that young lady has something called Down syndrome? And I kind of explained very rudimentary what Down syndrome was. And this Caymanian child was shocked. She's like, she does? And I said, yeah. She had a more, a fuller conversation with us as a person who actually had, that type of learning disability, Down syndrome, than the young lady who only had a sight problem. And to me, when that sunk in, I'm like, oh my God, Cayman is not prepared to deal with any child that does not fall out of that narrow range of what we consider normal. And that includes extremely brilliant kids. So if a child is really, really smart and advanced, we hold them back. We do all sorts of things that negatively impact their progress. And so, I think we definitely need, somebody said to invite the education minister in the show. I think we need to be talking about this particular issue a lot more. There are a lot of people who, for whatever reason, may not have obtained a high school diploma, but these people are well-read, they're well-informed, they're intelligent individuals, and they could be anything in the world that they want to be. Denny, some final comments, and then we'll take one last caller, and then we're going to allow the premier to go because I know he's got some stuff scheduled.
I think instead of coming to a premature conclusion that a child is not academically inclined, they should look at what you're essentially describing is more of specialization. So you say, well, I'm going to specialize in language because I don't like math, right? I don't think you should just put this blanket thing out there to write someone off to say that you're not academic. That's destructive.
Yeah.
We shouldn't be using that kind of language.
Thank you very much.
Take care.
All right. We got one more caller. I'm going to join in, and I know we have a queue. So the first caller, if you can go ahead with your comments or questions.
Good morning, Sandy. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Hear you loud and clear.
Good morning, Mr. Premier.
Good morning.
I just have one quick query to ask, and I hope you have enough time left to give a full answer on it. So I know we would have all seen the headlines and the reports that came out earlier this year that said young people from Cayman are being priced out of buying homes and of buying land. And it's a very, very serious concern that I have now. I did all the right things. I went to school, I went to high school, I went to uni, I got a job at a good firm, and I bought my piece of land, but my heart breaks, for my fellow countrymen and women who come to me every day and say, I have a good job, the bank won't give me a loan. When I finally do get a loan, the bank tells me that, someone else has swooped in and gotten it and offered far more money. And I just don't see our government doing anything to address that concern. And I don't blame PAC because I think this problem goes back, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 years. This should have been stopped a long, long time ago. And I'm just trying to wrap my head around what PAC is going to do, if anything, to try and curb this. And I'll leave you with one story from just last month. I work at a firm. Our firm has a real estate client. One person in that real estate firm sold a piece of land in Bordentown to a client for a large sum of money. The person who sold the land came in here 3 months before on a work permit, and he sold that land to someone who's never touched our soil. There was a big party about all the money he made, and we all came down, and He'd been here 3 months. He sold a piece of our land to someone who's never set foot here. He made the sale on Zoom, right? And people were celebrating and they were saying, oh, what a good job. And for someone like me, who has, friends, family, people who are 60, people who are 30 saying, they never got a chance, they were priced out. That's nothing to celebrate for us, right? Absolutely nothing. And I know, I don't know why we can't do something. I know I was talking to a lawyer from, I believe it was Bermuda, who said there, expats have to live there 15 years. They have to apply for PR and then they can buy a piece of land. Now, I know that if that law can fly there, it can certainly fly here. Mm-hmm. We are both beneath the crown. So there's absolutely no reason why we couldn't seek to do something like that now. And I just want to know why. Why have we let this get so bad? That we talk about our kids in school, that's one thing, but they can grow up, they can get great jobs, and by the time they're 25, they will not be able to buy a single piece of land or a house. It's ridiculous. Mm-hmm. So I'll leave that with you. And I just want to know what you're doing, because I voted for people in the pact, because everyone said Cayman first. We're going to work for the people of Cayman. We're going to try and improve the lives of our people here first. And I've yet to see any of that done. Mm-hmm. It's been well over a year. It's been well over a year. I've seen no bills. I've seen nothing that would fundamentally help us. And I just want to know why.
Mm-hmm. All right, caller. We have one additional caller, so let's go ahead and wrap up the callers, and then Premier will give you an opportunity to respond to that caller. Good morning and welcome to the program. Hello? Uh-oh. Caller? Hello? Nope. All right. Let's grab the other one. Good morning, caller, and welcome to the program.
Good morning, Sandy. Good morning, Premier. How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good morning. I'm fine, thank you. You're well.
This is Nathina. I must say I agree with the caller just now in regards to our opportunities as Caymanians coming forward with about purchasing land. Mm-hmm. But I didn't call it in regards to that. I call it in regards to agreeing with you, Sandy, in what you spoke about earlier, if you had went to Lighthouse School, mm-hmm. and, where you would have transitioned and become the person you would have become today. Because with my son, which I think the whole island should now be aware of, whose brain shut down last year in regards to being bullied at Bordentown Primary School. Mm-hmm. And when he started John Gray now here just this week, they called me the day before to tell me, say he's part of a nurture group that they're now having, and the education department seemed to have created this group, put my son into a group without advising me. And then when I went to meet with the school in regards to this nurture group, I saw the kids on top of the roof at John Gray High School in the new facility, and they tell me about it's safe. And then the nurture group is about having the kids who have special needs, who suffered from seizures and other situations like what my son went through. Mm-hmm. And to me, I was like, why put the kids on the roof for introduction? Is that safe, not knowing the temperament of some of these kids? Mm. I mean, the Mr. Smith, who I met with, told me about it's safe, and it was approved by Education Department. So I think Mr. Panton, our Premier, and Honorable Julia O'Connor, and needs to get the parents involved when they pre-make decisions for our children. Because the nurture group, according to my understanding, is supposed to just allow the kids, it's basically a free space just for them to be in there, and they're learning just the basics. They don't get the access to high school. They don't experience that high school experience, because for them, that's their way of protecting the kids from being bullied, which is why I kept asking about the bullying law, which you were freezing a lot over the video was being frozen for me, so I couldn't hear the whole conversation, what Mr. Panton passed in regards to that. But something needs to be done about the schools because our kids are going through the system not learning. And it's either we need to vote in a whole new set of people in the next election or people need to step down. But nothing is happening, and this nurture group needs to be looked into.
Okay. Thank you very much. And again, we welcome the education minister. We welcome the chief officers, anyone who wants to reach out and talk to the people of the Cayman Islands. You're more than welcome to come and explain, sometimes you guys set up these programs. What sort of input did you get from the parents, the children? Why do you think this program is going to work? Explaining these things, I think, to the stakeholders, who in this case are the parents and the students, most importantly, is something that would be helpful. So we'll let the Premier respond to that. And we do have one other question here that says, can you also add to the Premier that properties that have been foreclosed on are not available for Caymanians to purchase, and they're being peddled off to real estate agents who are then willing to sell to outside investors? So again, this goes back to maybe something a bit different going on in the housing market. So any considerations? Is the government thinking about putting any limitations on purchasing property? Who can purchase? Any of that in your minds at this time?
I think, Sandy, as I said earlier, right, this is a multifaceted problem, and it is one which requires careful consideration and a careful approach. We have taken a different route than many other countries in the Caribbean. Some other countries have limitations on, ownership of land. Historically, we have not done that. So it is, trying to change that very quickly and making a significant about face is going to be a bit of a shock. It is going to possibly cause some problems, but that's not, to me, if you're trying to address the problem that Caymanians are having, to me, nothing is off the table, right? We need to be able to consider a variety of issues. Now, we have internally in government, we have a housing task force, which is a cross ministry task force. So it's there, we even have people in tourism involved. So with the Ministry of Tourism, we have the various ministers, planning, myself, the tourism minister, we have the deputy premier. So we have a variety of people who are involved in this, and we're looking at across the spectrum at how we address these issues. Now, one of them is obviously facilitating the supply of housing, right? We have to understand fundamentally what is driving demand for housing, because once you understand what is driving the demand, then you might have some insight into how we address this, right? We have to improve access to financing. These are issues that I think are becoming more relevant now because the interest rate environment has changed and it's going up. We have significant cost of living issues. We have relatively high levels of inflation, and none of this is helping the situation. We also have issues about access to rental housing. Some people, no matter how much we desire it, some people are just not going to be in a position for some time to be able to own their own property. So we have to be concerned about the rental housing areas as well, and there are lots of issues that affect that. There's lots of concern around Airbnb, for example, being utilized as an avenue for people to convert from long-term rentals into short-term rentals, and in theory, if not in practice, obtain a higher return on their properties. So we've got to figure out how we improve. And then we've had this discussion on the show before about the issues around the quality of rental housing. So we have a huge range of issues to be involved with. The Ministry of Lands is involved with this. As I said, I'm involved. Deputy Premier, Minister for Tourism, and the Planning Minister. We're all involved with this because we recognize that it's a very significant issue, and we're gathering information, working with different people, talking to different. So I mentioned to you in the early part of the show that I spent about an hour and a half last night, late at night, on the phone with a real estate agent, trying to understand, some of the issues that from their perspective, and listening to some of their proposed solutions. Mm-hmm. So this is something that I think we're going to be in a position to be able to move forward with, start to take some steps to make some changes that will bring about some positive change. But I don't want to give the impression that we haven't been doing anything, because many of us campaigned on people, Caymanians, being able to get beyond just the current or the established sort of single home first purchase approach. So we have been granting waivers for people who are, for example, buying their second property. Not complete waivers necessarily. We look at the situation, but this is something that I believe needs to be set out in a proper framework with a proper policy, a clear policy, so that people are completely aware of it. But we have made a difference with a lot of people. We have people who have applied for, obtained abatements. So it is working, but we've got to get all the different facets and all the different factors working together to make a difference. There is not going to be a silver bullet with it, right? It's not something that we can snap our fingers. And as I said to you, we have challenges all around the world with this sort of issue. You may have seen there was a video that was going around over the last, I don't know, probably a year and a half, maybe 2 years now, about people in Hawaii, for example, who are finding it very difficult to be able to afford to live in their own country, their own state, I guess you would call that. And so it's not just Cayman, but we've got to find the solutions for us that work for us, and that may mean changing some of the established norms. That may mean that some people are not very happy about it. Obviously, we can't derail the economy. We can't completely, make changes that put at risk our economic prosperity and the success that we have had, because that means that we won't be able to address a lot of the other problems that we have. Trust me, as much of the problems that we have today, if you compare some of our neighbors, they have the same problems, they have more problems, and they have a lack of financial resources to address those. So we need to be the masters of our own destiny. We need to make sure that we're being able to deliver for our people, and particularly for our young people, because the caller earlier, the young man earlier who called, clearly is very, very passionate about that. His anecdote, the story that he put forward is a compelling one. It's one that's sad. It's very concerning. And this is our country we're talking about. These are our lands. This is our country. And we have got to be able to control the future and the prospects for our young people in this country. It is a broad issue, and we combine it with the existential risks of climate change and all this type of stuff. There are lots of challenges, but we're moving forward, and I'm confident that we're going to have more and more solutions to address the broad spectrum of issues. Things in Cayman are not in a bad place at all, but we've got to get better with it. We've got to move forward. And I am, and my colleagues in government, my government, we're all committed to the same thing, and that is making a difference in the quality of our lives of our people. That includes all these particular issues. It includes education. It includes making sure that we address and improve the access to affordable homes for our young people. So these are basic issues of, education and shelter and protection and security and opportunity. And we are working hard to make sure that all these things come together.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna leave you with that. But
yes, and thank you. Thank you very much. I was just saying to someone that it's obvious that Premier Access has now moved to the morning show. We're going to have you come on the morning show because the questions are coming in fast and furious, folks. But unfortunately, the Premier does have to go, and we do have another guest who's been patiently waiting in the back room as well. But just one quick thing, Renee's asking if there's a national housing in Cayman. There is, and we have invited them on the program. I tried chasing them up yesterday to pin down a date of when they can come in and talk about the actual, options that they have available. There is a National Housing Trust. They offer low-income housing, and they've got a lot of projects going on. So again, we're pleading for Mr. Ramos to make time for the people of the Cayman Islands to come on the program and to be made aware of what programs you have and how they can apply and find out more about it. So all these government agencies and departments, they say they're working overtime, they're doing all sorts of stuff, but it's for naught if people don't even know about it, like honestly.
Yeah.
All right.
I will encourage them to come on and participate. It's the National Housing Development Trust. I will encourage them to come on and schedule a show with you. But I also think that it would be really good to have a discussion around education as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So encourage the minister. I've been messaging her for the past whatever time she's been in this last time. She's welcome to come on. Jonathan is saying he can give us 5 more minutes. He's actually given us 37 minutes over the initial intent. So Dr. Tahir has a question about doctors. We're going to just have the Premier back on. Yeah. So have your questions ready for the next time that he's on the program. Premier Panton, thank you very, very much. We appreciate it.
And thank you very much. And as you know, Sandy, I am more than willing to be engaged. I'm happy to be in the morning show, happy to be in the evening show. Either way we do it, I am good with that. I think that I have demonstrated that I am certainly no less and probably much more available than other premiers in the past. I am happy to have these conversations. I may not have the specific answer that everybody's looking for, but the reality is if I have advance notice of what it is that people are concerned about and they want to talk about, I can get the relevant information. But I think it is important to have a lot of the other government departments and ministries who are in charge of areas that are topical and relevant to be able to come on and discuss these issues as well. So I'm going to encourage that. So thank you all very much. I really appreciate being here with you. And I want everyone to have an amazing day. As I said to you, Cayman is, not unlike many countries in the world. We have our set of problems, but let me tell you, it is still, despite our problems, it is still one of the best places in the world to live, to have your families, and to have your being in your business and everything else. So. Thank you all very much. Have a wonderful day. God bless. Take care, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much. So again, folks, that is Premier Panton. If you've been listening to the program this morning, we'll have him back on again next month. We'll go ahead and firm up some dates in terms of when he's available. Next month being this month, really, September. So in a couple of weeks' time, we'll see if he is available.